The world will always think of me as being Friedrich von Trapp, whether I want them to or not.
Christopher Plummer apparently complained that I weighed so much that I was so heavy to carry. When Playboy came to me and asked me if I wanted to be in their magazine, I was like, me?
None of us felt that Sound of Music would still be as popular and continue being popular year after year after year.
I had a friend once who told me that you're never going to be able to live this down. I mean, why would I ever want to?
Let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. When you read, you begin with A, B, C. When you sing, you begin with Do, Re, Mi.
The 7 children from The Sound of Music won the hearts of the world when they ran around Salzburg playing the Von Trapp children 35 years ago. The 7 screen siblings have made the trip back to Salzburg together for the first time since they made the movie there in 1965. Last time, of course, they were accompanied by teachers, voice coaches, chaperones and doting mothers who shot reels and reels of home movie footage.
Remember the footbridge?
That's the one over there.
Then we ran along.
Right here.
That's right. We ran along right there. Yep. I remember it.
This is your new governess, Fräulein Maria. As I sound your signals, you will step forward and give your name. You, Fräulein, will listen carefully. Learn their signals so that you can call them when you want them.
I'm Liesel. I'm 16 years old and I don't need a governess. I'm Charmian Carr and I played Liesel.
I'm Friedrich. I'm 14. I'm impossible.
I'm Nicholas Hammond. I played Friedrich.
I'm Brigitte.
You, didn't tell me how old you are, Louisa. I'm Helen Menzies, and I played Louisa.
I'm Brigitte. She's Louisa. She's 13 years old, and you're smart.
I'm Angela Cartwright. I played Brigitte.
I'm Kurt. I'm 11. I'm incorrigible.
I'm Dwayne Chase, and I played Kurt.
I'm Marta, and I'm going to be 7 on Tuesday. And I'd like a pink parasol.
I'm Debbie Turner, and I played Marta.
Yes, you're Gretel. And you're 5 years old?
I'm Kim Karath, and I played Gretel.
I believe that the film is so successful and has been so successful for so long because it's based on a true story. I think that Rodgers and Hammerstein's music is so wonderful that the audience leaves the theater not just remembering one song, but 2 songs or 3 songs or 4 songs.
The film's been seen by more than 1 billion people worldwide, making it the most popular movie ever. The film won 5 Oscars, including Best Director for Robert Wise, who, in true glitzy Hollywood fashion, jetted around the globe in the search for his soon-to-be superstars.
In terms of casting the movie, Robert Wise went to New York, he went to England, he went to Germany even to try and cast this movie. He went all over the place. And I think that he had a picture in his mind of the kind of children that he was looking for, and he just kept searching until he found them. He was searching for children that didn't look like they were sort of polished professionals. You know, he wanted very real kids, but also kids that could pull it off.
I remember turning up, and there were 400 children. This was just in New York. They actually saw 4,000 in all, but there were 400 that day in the room, and, you know, this huge group of Gretels and a huge group of Brigittas and all these Friedrichs, and they all looked perfect, every one.
Bob Weiss came by when we were sitting there on the soundstage and simply asked me if I would like to go to Austria. No screen test, no nothing. And of course I was so excited. At the time I said, oh sure, you don't even have to pay me. The script pretty much nailed it on the head. He was pretty incorrigible. There perhaps was a bit of typecasting there. I seem to have been incorrigible just as a kid outside of the character.
My hair was this color when I was cast, but the night before we started filming, Robert Wise took a look at me and said, I want him to be blonde. And so I went straight into the 20th Century Fox hairdressers, In those days, they didn't have the kind of products they do now, so it was literally a case of just pouring straight bleach on it and blistering the scalp and getting it the color. And then they had to do that every week for the whole shoot. In a lot of the Do-Re-Mi sequence, for instance, I've got this funny little straw hat on, and the reason for that was my hair would turn kind of straw yellow if it got exposed to the sunlight.
Well, I was a bit shy. I'm going to be 7 on Tuesday, and I'd like a pink parasol. She was a sweet kid, wasn't she? I guess I was a sweet kid.
There was a rumor that I passed away. That was among the most shocking rumors I personally heard when an English friend of mine said, "Oh my goodness, but I heard that you died." And there's not much to say to that except for, well, obviously it was not an accurate rumor.
Being able to come with the people that I had originally been here with has really sparked a lot of the things that went on, and a lot of the things that we talked about, and how much fun it was.
Now, children, do, re, mi, fa, so, and so on are only the tools we use to build a song. Once you have these notes in your head, you can sing a million different tunes by mixing them up, like this. So, do, la, fa, mi, do, re. When you know the notes to sing, you can sing most anything together.
You know what?
I don't remember that, but...
The gift shop was here, but I think the bench was like right here or something.
Well, I
like
think
right
so,
here.
because it was right through here, yeah.
This was one of the prettiest views we ever had.
What a glorious day.
The 9 months they spent together making the film forged a unique friendship that lasts to this day, although being scattered all over the world means that they rarely have the chance to meet.
It brings back so many memories that I had, forgotten about. And it brings back all the trouble that they used to get into, and I'm looking at these kids today, and they're all bigger than I am, and I'm thinking I used to kind of tell them what to do and be their big sister, and it feels funny now.
High on a hill was a lonely goat herd, lay, hoodle-lay, hoodle-lay, ooh. Loud was the voice of the lonely goat herd, lay, hoodle-lay, hoodle-loo.
Julie Andrews arrived on set hot foot from her success in Mary Poppins, and she hadn't lost her magic touch with children.
From the goat herd, lay, hoodle-lay, hoodle-loo.
I remember Julie Andrews used to sing to us, especially during the times that maybe we were getting a little bit antsy and in between shots. She would pull up a guitar, sit down, and sing to us and get us to sing with her, just like she did in the movie, except that it was off camera. And I just have so much wonderful memories about that.
Doe, a deer, a female deer. Ray, a drop of golden sun. Me, a name I call myself.
My relationship with Julie Andrews was a nice relationship. She and I were the closest in age of anyone on the set.
Tea, a drink with jam and bread.
Julie Andrews, when we were finished filming, had said that she wanted to give me some advice about what to do with my money. And she said, I think you should buy a mink coat. She said, you will have it forever, and it's the best investment you can ever make. And so I did. I took her advice, and I went and I bought a beautiful mink coat, and I wore it and wore it and wore it. She was really right.
Christopher Plummer wasn't quite so children-friendly. He calls the movie The Sound of Mucus.
A prince on the
I've heard that Chris wasn't big on kids, but he and I actually managed to get along. I've got a couple of pictures of him and me sitting together sharing a joke, which are some of my favorite pictures from the movie. And he signed it on the back to those two laughing boys, Chris.
Well, Well, there was a story about the piggyback scene over the Alps. We did have to do that a number of times, and I think by the time we did that scene, my weight had increased. Christopher Plummer apparently complained that I weighed so much, that I was so heavy to carry. And then apparently later on he was quoted as saying that he wouldn't mind carrying me now.
That will bring us back to do re mi fa sol la ti do, so do.
It took us 9 months to film The Sound of Music, and the only person that didn't grow was me. I was taller than everyone when we started filming.
I grew 6 inches in the 6 months. So, I mean, it was the classic growth spurt. I went from 5'3" to 5'9". So I literally grew an inch a month while we were filming, and it just created havoc. I mean, obviously the idea was we were supposed to line up with Charmian as the tallest and us going down. And I kept having to either be on lifts, have the lifts taken out, everyone else put on lifts, everything to keep that line even.
After the lifts stopped working and he kept still growing, they started putting me up on little boxes in scenes that you wouldn't see our feet.
As well as growth spurts playing havoc with filming, there were dental dilemmas when the cast's milk teeth started falling out.
I was 7 and I hadn't lost my teeth yet. And during the filming and when we were here in Austria, my teeth were getting very loose, and so I had to eat on the side of my mouth. I lived on French fries and a little bit of Wiener Schnitzel that I could get past my teeth without knocking them out. By the time we returned to LA, my teeth were just hanging by strings, and they figured we weren't going to make it through the rest of the movie. So I had dentures. So people used to think I had a lisp, but it was really, truly, I was trying to speak with all this stuff in my mouth.
It wasn't all raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens. Behind every cute poppet in the spotlight is a pushy mum.
Debbie and Kim were always pushing each other. And so Kim's mother didn't like Debbie's mother, and then Debbie's mother didn't like Kim's mother.
We both have mothers that would urge us to make sure that we were in front of the camera, or who got the best shot. And so we might nudge each other a little bit and kind of, you know, fight for position.
I would oftentimes have to scold one or the other of them, and then the mothers, of course, would get mad at me. How dare you scold my daughter?
It was starting to become, you know, I mean, where the mothers were kind of constantly trying to push their little darling into the front of each shot, to the point where, you know, we'd rehearse something and then come back to shoot it, and suddenly somebody's standing nowhere near where they'd been standing in the rehearsal, and it was because there'd been a little whispering going on with Mama.
We were lining up for a shot over at the riding school, and we were up on the stage. And Charmian refreshed my memory on this one. She said that Kim was trying to get ahead of me, and I was trying to get ahead of Kim, and we were doing this, and then I think my last nudge kind of like pushed her off, and then she bounced.
Are we really going to sing before a whole lot of people tonight?
Of course, look. The von Trapp family singers. Here are your names. Liesel, Friedrich, Louisa, Brigitte, Kurt, Martha, and Gretel.
Why am I always last?
Because you are the most important.
Oh.
The dance in 16 going on 17 was a very difficult dance. Luckily, I had studied dance since I was 4, but I look back on it today, and it impresses me more today than it did then. When we started our dance scene, I had had one set of shoes for rehearsal and then a brand new set for the filming. And the wardrobe department forgot to put the rubber on the soles of those shoes. And so when I jumped on the first bench, I kept going, and I went through the plate glass windows, broke the glass, landed on my ankle outside the gazebo, and of course everyone was absolutely panicked. 16 going on 17 was the last scene filmed on Sound of Music. We were way over schedule, way over budget, and Robert Wise, I knew, was having just almost a heart attack. But I didn't cut myself. The only thing that I did was sprain my ankle. And so they got an ace bandage, and they bandaged my ankle. They put makeup on the bandage, makeup on my legs, and I danced on my ankle all day long. At the end of that day, when I walked out those doors and said, "Whee!" the crew stood up and applauded for me. And that was the most wonderful feeling. That, besides the birth of my daughters and my granddaughter, has been one of the most thrilling moments of my life.
That rain yesterday. Look at the snow. You guys remember snow being up there?
No, we didn't have any.
I was just saying, do you remember, Charmy, how we had to have, the boat was actually on a cable that they pulled it because Dwayne and I couldn't possibly row it that fast to get all the way from there to there. So the guys pulled it on the cable, and then we came and tipped it right there and swam from there to there.
Probably the only thing that was traumatic on the shoot of Sound of Music was my near-death experience. Maybe that's where the rumor started. When I fell out of the boat, in the boat scene. First of all, the lake had leeches, which was kind of icky. The problem with the boat scene was that little Kimmy didn't know how to swim.
These days, movie makers would never get away with it, but back in 1965, kids did their own stunts.
Julie Andrews was supposed to catch me when the boat capsized, and she did the first time around, but of course that was not the print that they wanted. They didn't want that one. Robert Wise wanted to do it again, and the next time around, the boat shook in such a way so that Julie Andrews was thrown off the opposite side of the boat from me, and I went down.
This exuberant scene almost ended in tragedy.
She would just sink to the bottom of the lake, and someone would have to go in and save her, which was really kind of frightening. Her poor mother was standing there by the shore, just, as I would. She was having a fit. And she ingested so much water that there was one part of the scene where I was supposed to carry her out of the lake. And Robert Wise said, "Heather, look at your shoulder. You better wipe that off." And she had just thrown up all over me.
Then remember the shot they shot out after we had fallen in, but they had to wet us again, and they used the watering can?
No, the big spray cans. Yeah. We stayed wet for a day or two just to get all those shots in.
I remember being really excited when we shot that because I had my first drink of brandy, because the prop man came and gave everybody a little cup of brandy after the shot. And I thought this was so cool. I thought, this is really being like a grown-up now.
This is Baroness Schrader. And these are my children.
How do you do?
The children were much younger than I was. Nicholas was 13. He turned 14 when we were working on Sound of Music, but I was 21. And during that time, that's a big, big age gap. And so I didn't stay at the same hotel with them. I got to stay at another hotel with Christopher Plummer and some of the other crew members and cast. And I felt very adult.
I actually looked up to Charmian so much. I wanted to be just like Charmian, and I thought she was so ladylike, and she was so poised and so elegant. Charmian made a big fuss over me, too. And I spent a lot of time hugging her and kissing her. I was a very affectionate little child, so there was a lot of that. At the time, I felt sad that I was the youngest because I didn't get to
be involved in as many of the tricks and hijinks as the older kids did. Plus, I had to go to bed earlier. That bugged me.
Frolicking in cast-off curtains is one thing, but how did Nicholas, a 5'9" teenager in the middle of the swinging 60s, feel about swapping his bell-bottoms for lederhosen?
I felt a little bit silly. I suppose silly is the right word. Being dressed in lederhosen, being dressed in cute clothing. It was just, I was an adolescent, and I was, I suppose, as self-conscious and as awkward as most adolescents were, and I was aware that mine wasn't going to be undergone, you know, in the privacy of my own home and school. Mine was going to be displayed for all time.
My heart wants to shine like a chime that bright from a church.
They hired 4 other children to sing along with the children, to give a fuller sound, because some of the children didn't really sing that well. And my sister Darlene has an unbelievable voice. She did the da-da-da-da with the Sound of Music notes. And so every time I hear those, I think of Darlene.
I leave and heave a sigh and say goodbye, goodbye.
I was able to sing everything on my own except that one high note, and it was Charmy's sister Darlene that did the high note for me. I just couldn't get it, and so that was it. She did that one high note, but all the rest of it was on my own.
Angela and I became very fast friends. So we were kind of the same age, and we got along very well. She introduced me to the Beatles, and we became Beatlemaniacs together.
We both loved the Beatles, and we were both totally Beatle crazy. We had this like club that we created, which was the Heffalane Club. We had a slogan and a motto, and we had a poem and a song. Heather, Paul, and Angela. Don't laugh. It was good.
Unlike most Beatlemaniacs, though, they got to meet the Fab Four in person, eventually.
It's a meringue, but it's got whipped cream and not chocolate.
You know what? I think the spoon is like...
You are looking for...
What's it called?
Meringue with chocolate.
All our different personalities fit in sort of different ways, but it makes kind of a whole. It makes one thing when it's all together, which is surprising. I've certainly never had any experience that's similar to that.
I've had 2 families all my life, and I'm constantly reminded of that by everyone else around the world who is always wanting to know not only what I'm doing, but also what they're doing. And so it does give you a great sense of ownership and a sense of pride of having been a part of something that has meant so much to so many people.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, your tickets for the Sound of Music tour, please.
Good morning. How do you do, sir?
75,000 people a year make the pilgrimage from all over the world to Salzburg to take the Sound of Music coach tour. Today, the tourists have 7 very special fellow travelers on board.
Brown paper packages tied up with strings. These are a few of my favorite things.
Curiously, Austria is one of the few countries in the world where the Sound of Music is definitely not one of their favorite things. It ran for just 3 days in Salzburg cinemas, with the locals objecting to Hollywood's version of Austrian history.
When the beast sings, when I'm feeling sad. I simply remember my favorite things, and then I don't feel so bad.
Being here in Salzburg and walking around the places where I was when I was 14, and they haven't changed, and suddenly you come back at 50 and you walk up the same stairs and you walk down the same garden path, and you realize To the world, you'll always be 14, but you aren't.
Boat out there. They capsized and fell in the water? Yep. Did you know they almost lost Gretel in that scene? She couldn't swim.
I've always wanted to come back, and what a better way to come back than with the 7 people that I shared, you know, this experience with. It's a dream to me to be able to do this with my Sound of Music siblings. It'll never happen again.
Quiet, please. Roll, better.
I remember squeezing around something. No, the gates went the other way, I thought. The gates bend. I think they were there.
How
They were there. I remember they were there.
But don't those steps look small to you? They were this huge...
They were like twice that size.
It was like climbing Mount Everest. This is like being revisited with your worst nightmare. The one thing that you absolutely could not do. I mean, this was the hardest thing, but of all of them, this was it. This was the thing. We come right back now. It's the first thing we do.
It took 10 weeks to film the famous Do-Re-Mi sequence despite months of rehearsal before leaving the States, though they did have to fit in 4 hours of school every day as well. 35 years later, they're back in the Mirabel Gardens for the first time. What chance of mastering the steps now?
Filming in the Mirabel Gardens, I thought, this is unbelievable. I mean, the same ones who sit there and listen when the director's talking were the same ones who listen then. The ones who keep chatting and pay no attention and the director has to repeat things 4 times, driving the rest of us completely mad, are the same ones doing it now. I thought, this is unbelievable. It is precisely the same.
I can tell this is all going to work just so fluidly. Well, I don't know how we can improve on that.
Was that scary for everyone?
I think people would like another rehearsal. Yeah. I think 1 billion people will pay money to come and see that.
You think, well, of course, I mean, what studio wouldn't make The Sound of Music? You know, here's this great director, great actress, great story, all of that. But 20th Century Fox was bankrupt. The sheriffs had locked the front gates, and the studio was in receivership because of the money they'd lost on Cleopatra. Darryl Zanuck, you know, went to the courts and said, give me 6 months. He had enough money to either make 3 very cheap little movies or 1 big one. And he decided to roll the dice once and gamble everything. And the one he decided to make was this. And every single pundit in the film industry thought he'd lost his mind. I mean, this was a time when the successful films were Alfie, Psycho was about to be made, Look Back in Anger. You know, this was gritty, kitchen sink realism. And he decided to make a film about apple strudel and singing nuns and children. And this picture went on to bankroll 20th Century Fox for the next 20 years.
The film made more money than Gone with the Wind when it was first released and has made many people rich since, but very little found its way to its child stars.
These are a few of my favorite things.
I think like any family, you have fallouts, and I think we definitely have over the years, and I think that, you know, the anger about not really being compensated for Sound of Music and all the things that came afterwards, the video and the compact disc and now the DVD and all the money that's been made on Sound of Music. There was a lot of, you know, problems and unhappiness about that.
We were making very small salaries. I mean, we couldn't afford to eat in the hotel. We would go out, you know, with our mothers and find some cheap little cafe in Salzburg to eat in.
We got paid, I think it was like a 20-year contract payable in the first 10. So we got residuals for the first 10 years that it played on television. After that, nothing. So no, I mean, by today's standards, children's stars that make a lot of money, they make a ton nowadays. Then it was quite minimal.
No one held guns at any of our heads and forced us to sign the 7-year contracts we signed, which were all for such low amounts of money. But, and we were, you know, thrilled to do it at the time. Yeah, of course, I suppose there's a little part of you that thinks inside, well, you know, when the studio has made literally billions of dollars, and some people have gotten enormously rich off of this film, that perhaps it would have been a nice gesture, you know, if they had come back and said, look, never in our wildest dreams did we think it would make this much, so here's a little something. But nobody made Fox, you know, it's not in anyone's contract, and they're perfectly within their rights not to. So it doesn't really matter, because it also was an experience that I wouldn't have traded for anything in the world.
Does it really work? Of course it does. You try it. What things do you like? Cinderella. Christmas. Bunny rabbit. No school.
Things like that scene in the thunderstorm scene where we're all in the bed together. That to me was always kind of like my image of the perfect family. That I don't know whether to this day it's a good thing or a bad thing to have in your mind as something that's possible. You know, a perfect wedding, a perfect relationship, a perfect family. And I've loved having those things kind of quietly in the back of my mind, but sometimes I think maybe they're expectations that don't necessarily serve you well.
My life has not turned out the way I thought it would. I thought I would be married forever. I thought I would never get a divorce. I thought I would be always happy. The Sound of Music family was this wonderful, loving family, and I was sure that I would have this wonderful, loving family. And I went through bad times. I'm divorced. And, you know, at times it's upsetting, you know, to know that there isn't really that ideal family. It doesn't exist. I wish I would have been more prepared for the bad times in life. We all think when we have the good times that it's going to be forever. But as you get older, you realize, you know, it isn't. There's one person that I've been closest to since the beginning, and that's Nicholas Hammond. He is truly, truly my friend. He's been with me through the most difficult periods. And he's been terrific.
Not only was she incredibly beautiful, and I'm probably like every male who ever saw the film, you know, I found her really attractive, but I just also found her such a wonderful person. She was kind of like the sort of woman that you thought, well, you know, that's the kind of person you want to be with. It's a fairy tale.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they
In
sang everybody's hearts and minds.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you bet.
She was young.
She was young, and she
The
was...
Baroness was older.
Yes.
No. She was young.
And now the non-bitter and twisted.
Genuine and unspoiled and natural.
What did she see in him?
Money.
Charming.
My gosh.
Strength.
Character.
Character.
A challenge to soften him. And a really nice backyard.
I don't think it looks ridiculous. I think it's a highly romantic, not realistic story. But that's what it is. On a really profound level, it does seem to strike, you know, a very genuine and truthful chord in people, you know, on an emotional level. I don't think it's on an intellectual level or even on a reality level. And that's no small thing.
The 7 of them have lived with the legacy of this film for 35 years, and The Sound of Music continues to play a significant part in their lives.
The world will always think of me as being Friedrich von Trapp, whether I want them to or not. In some ways, it has clearly opened doors for me. In other ways, it has probably caused preconceptions about me that maybe the film, if I hadn't done the film, it wouldn't have. And it does kind of, you know, impact on you, and you start thinking, oh, well, they better not all read in the newspaper that, you know, I was caught in a drug bust, or I was this, or I was that. So in that respect, I suppose, in a subtle way, it does, you know, slightly channel your behavior, and as I say, I think maybe make you less brave.
There was a period of time in my life, I think with all of us, when we were in our sort of late teens and early 20s, when you want to just be an adult already. You know, you want to move on and be an adult. And I think that I had this sort of image in sort of the public's mind and also in casting directors' minds that I was this Louisa von Trapp. And, you know, when you're 18, you don't look like that anymore.
You say goodbye, and I say hello.
I didn't feel pretty or sexy. And when Playboy came to me and asked me if I wanted to be in their magazine, I was like, me? In your magazine? You know, so it was very tempting to do. And in a way, I'm glad I did it. I still have the pictures in my file somewhere, you know, and maybe I can show them to my grandchildren someday and say, "Who's your grandma?"
So what happened to our magnificent, much-loved 7 after The Sound of Music faded? They're now 40-something going on 50-something, and between them, they've climbed more than a few mountains.
The thing that bothered me about being an actress was you had so little control over your life. You had to sit home and wait for the phone to ring, for some agent or some director or some producer to hire you for his part. And that drove me crazy. I was too energetic to do that. I wanted to work, and I wanted to work every day. I didn't want to sit home and wait for work to come along. And that's one of the reasons why I was happy that my design business became successful. I was working for a very famous singer, Michael Jackson. I worked for him for 7 years. He had told me that The Sound of Music was his favorite film, that whenever he was depressed, he had a copy of The Sound of Music, and he would run it in his theater.
For whatever reason, it was impossible for me to get work after I did The Sound of Music. I loved acting. That's the only thing I knew how to do very well as a child, and I couldn't get parts after having been in The Sound of Music. As I got a little older, I'd get a commercial or modeling jobs and various things, but I couldn't get back into the big loop that I was in. Well, currently, I'm a mother of 4 children, but I also have been running a business. I'm actually an artist. I run a floral design business where I do very beautiful weddings, and I do permanent pieces for people's homes.
Heather married actor Robert Urich and became a happy Hollywood wife.
I really do believe in love stories. I'm living one myself. I met my husband 27 years ago. We're just about to have our 25th anniversary. And it's been a true love story, you know, for 25 years. You know, you don't hear about the happy ones in Hollywood. There are quite a few of them.
My life, actually, since the movie is quite normal. I don't generally tell people that I was in the movie. And it's not because I'm not proud of being in it and I don't have good memories. It's just not something that I've ever waved a flag about. When people have asked me, oh, you know, what have you done or what do you like to do, I'll mention other things. My career as a geologist or as a software engineer, sailing, climbing, whatever, something else.
I was on a series that was like #1, and so I was known all over. And there are tons of Lost in Space fans. I guess it is different to kind of be in this showbiz kind of atmosphere and still think you're kind of normal, you know? I don't think I had a lot of predetermined ideas about what was going to happen career-wise. I had a business that I had when I was raising my kids. It was kind of a funky gift store because it allowed me the freedom to be there for my kids. And I let that go about 2 years ago and took it on the internet so that I would have more freedom to be able to pursue photography, which has always been my love, which is what I would probably have been had I not been into acting.
At 5, Kim had already done 3 films when she got to the set of The Sound of Music.
I definitely think that fame as a child sets you apart from many, many people. And it's a very odd phenomenon. I don't know what it would have been like to have not been famous as a child. I decided to devote myself to my little boy after he was born. I had waited a long time to have a child, and I just was surprised by how, I mean, I don't suppose it should have surprised me, but I was surprised by how much I was needed by him, and he needed me around. And now that he's a little bit older, he's 9 now, I feel like I can go back to my own pursuits.
None of us will forget Nicholas as Spider-Man. But he went on to become a highly successful international actor and writer, now based in Sydney.
Of the 7, I am the one who has, well, let's say, put food on the table and a roof over my head as an actor for all the years since the film was made. And it's the only job I've ever had, and I'm not somebody who's become a businessman or a this or a that or a whatever. I've just stayed in this business. I still wake up in the morning and look for my name on a call sheet. So my life hasn't changed. My profession hasn't changed.
I think when you turn 40, I think a lot of things don't matter as much that did matter before. I think you start to listen to yourself a lot more. When you raise a family, I think it all kind of falls into perspective. What you care about and what you believe in, what makes you happy.
Heather and Robert have both battled with cancer over the last few years, and she's now the driving force behind their Foundation for Sarcoma Research.
I think that when one is faced with an illness such as cancer, a very serious illness no matter what it is, you really do face immortality or mortality, whatever, you know. It's the most horrifying thing to ever have to go through, to really face the loss of a loved one and have it be a possible reality. I'm much more relaxed now than I ever was, because I've been staring down the face of the dreaded beast. Nothing could scare me ever again.
I've been wanting to see this ever since we came over.
It's beautiful.
Right there, the guitar, right there, and said, let's start at the very beginning. Right there.
We just had a lot of fun because we had bad weather when we were up here before, and had a lot of free time, and we just ran around and had a blast.
Clean and bright, you look happy to meet me.
This is probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen, I personally have ever seen in my entire life. And it instills such emotion in me. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's because I can just see the ghosts of little Heather dancing around, you know, jumping over a guitar and singing and having a wonderful time.
Bless my homeland forever.
I think I'm saying goodbye to my childhood a little bit.
I don't think the barn has changed. No.
Not as much as we've changed.
No.
Small and white, clean and bright, you look happy to meet me. Blossom of snow, may you bloom.
I find it interesting that when we shot the film, it was early spring, and now it's late autumn, and, you know, I was looking at all those dead leaves on the ground, and I was thinking, well, it's funny because in a way, I mean, I've come back now and looked at my own childhood, but from the perspective of a 50-year-old, and it was a wonderful thing to have done, but in a funny sort of way, I find myself saying goodbye to this film now.
So long, farewell, I'll be to say goodnight. I hate to go and miss this pretty sight. So long, farewell, I'll be to say adieu. Adieu, adieu, to you and you and you. So long, farewell, au revoir, Peter Zane. I'd like to stay and taste my first champagne. Yes? So long, farewell, I'll be to say goodbye. I leave and heave a sigh and say goodbye.
Coming up next, the conclusion of a two-part story, The Hunt.